Para nosotros es un placer poder presentar un tema tan innovador y que hay muchas preguntas que las personas quieren saber de cómo se introduce esto de la inteligencia artificial. Nannette, qué gusto tenerte.
Gracias.
Con nosotros de la Oficina de Tecnología de Puerto Rico. También una mujer ahí dando la batalla en sistemas tecnológicos, así que como siempre cuenta con nosotros para lo que podamos ayudar. Así que adelante, este es el tema y aprender mucho.
Gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias a Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce por tenernos en la tarde de hoy. Mi nombre es Lorena Molina-IrizarrySenior, aquí de Puerto Rico. We're going to transition to English because of our panelists. Many of them, the conversation is going to be in English, but I believe you all have headsets. So I currently serve as the Senior Advisor for Puerto Rico strategy and implementation with the Department of Commerce, U.S. Department of Commerce, as well as the United States Census Bureau. And we have a few panelists here, and we're going to speak about a topic that I think in the context of where we are right now in Puerto Rico, it's critical in terms of economic development and economic growth, and how businesses and corporations are really kind of the agent, the change of agents for the island. And we talk a lot about entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about sustainability, which we heard on the previous panel. But there's a topic here that I would like us to kind of deep dive today. So I will introduce our panelists, and I would like all of you to just give a quick introduction of your background, who you are, why are you here, and why you think this topic is so important. So we're going to be speaking about future-proofing technology investments and data, and how data and technology are so critical for economic growth for Puerto Rico. So talk about Web3, AI, what does this all mean? So let's start with Keiko Yoshino. Keiko Yoshino is the Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Blockchain Technology Association. I'm just going to go real quick through the line. We have Bryan Lane, who is the Chief Business Intelligence Officer for the FDIC. He's also the co-founder of the AI Center of Excellence at GSA, which is the General Services Administration, part of the United States federal government. And he's a tech speaker and writer, so thank you for being here with us. Next we have Nannette Martínez-Ortiz. She's the Chief Information and Innovation Officer of the Government of Puerto Rico at the Puerto Rico Innovation and Technology Service, or otherwise known as PRITS. And then we have Mr. Jascha Stein, which really long title. He's the current lead of the Puerto Rico Prosperity Initiative. He's also the co-founder and CEO of OmniBot.ai. And supports the World Economic Forum as a global innovator. So thank you for taking the time. And we're going to just go straight to the line. Keiko, let's talk a little bit about your background and why do you think this topic is so critical for this conversation?
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here and with this amazing panel. So my name is Keiko Yoshino. I am the Executive Director for the Puerto Rico Blockchain Trade Association. My background is in economic development and public policy. We started the association 2 years ago with the goal of advancing Web3 development in Puerto Rico through education, advocacy, and community building. Our belief is that Puerto Rico has a ton of talent, and we can get ahead of the curve of the next wave of internet, Web3, by really engaging with students early, challenging them to learn about programs through STEM, and stand up a pipeline for jobs in the future.
Excellent, thank you. Bryan.
Is this working? Okay, beautiful. My name is Bryan Lane. I am the Chief of Business Intelligence Services at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Over the last 5 years of my career, I've really been focused on government-wide AI adoption. I've helped draft and publish almost $1 billion worth of AI and data-related contracts for the federal government. I worked in industry for a little while. My background really is in data analysis and trying to understand the signal from the noise in data. The reason that I am still a civil servant is because I really believe that there is some real power in the policy that we create and how that creates impacts and effects on the ground. And if we only had enough understanding of the data between those things, we would be able to do good government and good governance. So I'm really happy to answer all of your questions and to be a part of this panel today. And I think, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Bryan. I think that's a very nice segue for Nannette from a government perspective. So.
Yeah, that's a good, I'll follow up. Nannette Martínez, I'm a government CIO and Executive Director of PRITS, which is the Puerto Rico Innovation and Technology Service. I actually come from the private sector. I come from product development. So I actually specialize more in UX, so it's more of user experience from private sector. And more recently, I've come to know and love and embrace cybersecurity. So there's a big, they conflict, right, in many ways, because UX seeks ways to remove friction, make, have a seamless experience for users, while cybersecurity looks to harden, right? So these are like conflicting objectives, but when you have a really good understanding of these things, you can really have, great results. Right, so that's what I've been working on most recently. I've been in government since 2021 as Deputy Director of PRITS and now Executive Director. So yes, I understand your pains. Lorena has spoken about your pains as well, not knowing and not cohesively, right, understanding the data nomenclatures and data standards of the government of Puerto Rico, seeing as there aren't any yet. And we are working hard at that as well. So that's it, I think.
Hi, my name is Jascha Stein. I'm connecting human and artificial intelligence. I'm a pretty nerd. I'm not used to speaking in audience, but I try every day. So the AI won't help me here, obviously. But my work is here in Puerto Rico with a prosperity initiative to connect and facilitate potentials in terms of networks and innovation, artificial intelligence, and the work for improving the situation here. Those bringing, connecting companies in Puerto Rico to the European specifically, but to the World Economic Forum, to the global value chains, and build innovation networks. What I do for People-Centered Internet. People-Centered Internet is a non-profit. We work on accessibility for the broad people. So we work on one is in the business sector, but specifically in impact. We work on digital inclusion. This is very interesting for businesses, and specifically in Puerto Rico, because we can improve the customer contact by digital technologies, and we can improve the internal processes in companies to improve the efficiency of value add. Plus, we can connect this People-Centered Internet and the work in the World Economic Forum, the corporates here and the small and medium-sized businesses to the business networks we have.
Thank you so much. I think it's really important to level set and take a step back and really talk about what all these means. ChatGPT has disrupted, industries, and a lot of people don't understand exactly how that works. So I think we need to kind of level set, take a step back and talk about the foundations. When we think about disrupting and building entrepreneurial ecosystems and thinking about the economy and how businesses grow and how we are, living in a digital-first, digital economy, knowledge-sharing economy, it's really important to connect data and technology and how these things come together. But what is a definition of, for businesses, in the context of the audience here, of building technology and future-proofing that in this world of AI that we're living in? And perhaps, Bryan, you could take a stab at that and try to, let's go back to the foundations.
This is a huge question. We could spend an hour just talking about this question alone, but I'll try and sum up, right? And so artificial intelligence is not new. This is a field of study that has existed for a long time. We have different techniques and methods. In the early days of the 70s, we were focused on logic and rules-based systems, and then over time, we were able to develop systems that could learn, and they learn through data. And so the advancements that we're seeing today are starting to accelerate a lot of things that we would consider to be pretty complicated tasks for people. Drafting emails or document summaries and reading and comprehending information. Right? But I think at the crux of AI, really what we're talking about is how do we use technology to augment and mimic tasks that humans would routinely do. And so when it comes to future-proofing, how do we future-proof businesses, understanding now that the technology is moving so fast, if you follow natural language processing world today, there's new software releases that come out literally every day. So like, how do you keep up with that? And I think this is a core part of business, is to have an innovation mindset, to have a human-centered mindset, and to understand how the market and how your customers are changing, and to use technology then to find product market fit in the new environment.
Thank you. And I think by show of hands, who has heard the term human-centered design? Human-centered design, or design thinking, agile development. Okay. There you go. There's a group here. So, Keiko, I think this is the critical part of the conversation. How do we create ecosystems to educate not only business owners, small, medium enterprises, but corporates, not only in Puerto Rico, but also how do we expand from an economic development perspective if we want to make Puerto Rico an enterprising island and a leader in technology? We need to start with the basics and education. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I just want to level set a teeny bit and back up a little bit more. So what we focus on in education is Web3. Show of hands of who's heard of Web3.
Hombre, qué bueno. ¿Cuál es tu nombre?
Okay. So we'll start with Web 1. Web 1 was a read-only internet, and that was created early 90s with the purpose of having academia be able to talk to one another. Then in 2004, 2005, Facebook came along, and that was Web 2. And the idea was that you'd be interacting with each other socially. And then there was Instagram, and then there was Twitter. And this Web 3 is this third wave of the internet. And the focus of the Web 3 is more decentralized. Web 2, major problems was the data was being stored, it's being used to target you for ads, it's being sold on your behalf. So, the problems of Web 2 are supposed to be addressed in Web 3. Web 3 is not here yet, we're still working on building it. But that's just the timeline for this concept of Web 3. Working in government in Washington, D.C., even in 2013, there wasn't Twitter being heavily used. Now, that's being used by all politicians as a medium to connect. So it's definitely a lag time of government adoption to something that everyone has been using for a decade or even longer. But to that end, I think it's really up to the private sector to lead this, to show how it's used. I mean, the private sector was using Twitter to communicate to all of its shareholders and stakeholders and to provide community. And then when that grew so large, it's like, this could be a voice. This could be how we interact and engage with our audiences for our brands. So social media, I think, was really leveraged well by the private sector. And I really think the private sector needs to do it again with the emergence of Web3, specifically with things like AI. You may already have Siri or you may already have Alexa, and that's AI, but it isn't in the same as what ChatGPT can do because it only answers one question. What's the weather today, Siri? How hot is it today, Siri? But if you were like, Siri, how do you make arroz y bichuelas? She'll give you that. But then in ChatGPT, you ask the same question, and then you say, well, what are the ingredients? What's the recipe for arroz y bichuelas? And then I need the grocery list. So ChatGPT is able to take the information that you give it, and you're able to train it to give you answers to follow up subsequent questions, which is really what is why it caught fire so quickly. It got 1 million users in just 5 days. Which is the leading developing app in the world. It now has 100 million users But to give you like context, it took Netflix years to get to 1 million users. And so I don't that answers the question about how they can be engaged.
Definitely, and I think that it's really important because it does represent how we use technology in our everyday lives. I think I want to direct a question to Jascha here in terms of what is the global, movement around corporations, around, enterprises using technology, AI, and adapting their technology and data investments to really expand operations. And in the context of medium to large businesses, maybe what in Puerto Rico, las pymes, las pequeñas y medianas empresas, small to medium enterprises, we need to think about Puerto Rico participating in a global competitive environment to stay relevant. And digitization and e-commerce and really transitioning from brick and mortar stores into perhaps retail. How do you kind of expand the boundaries of that to think about Puerto Rico from a trade perspective? How do you get products out there? How do you get services out there to the world? And really e-commerce, digitization, but also in the commercial sphere, it's a digital first approach. And I think that's very critical as part of the conversation when we think about economic development. So Jascha, can you speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. My experience is that it's key to have an internal and an external innovation. So it means I work with the workforce, as Keiko mentioned, to improve the knowledge and the experience working with AI, to apply AI within the organization. This is key for the efficiency of the organization, but it's key to be part of the global value chains. One other part is the external innovation, working with startups. This is very key specifically in the areas of artificial intelligence, because it's not just about moving monthly or weekly. Today is daily, it's hourly improvements. The speed of artificial intelligence development is exponential. So it means specifically medium and large size corporates have to have specific internal use from my perspective and startup partners to keep track on innovation of AI, because I think we all know today that this will state. And the benefit of the innovation technology for companies in Puerto Rico is that today it's way easier to connect to global value chains. So it's way easier to find partners, not just in the States and in South America, but specifically in Europe and in emerging regions like in Asia, Southeast Asia, to build partnerships and with global trade. And that's what I would like to promote to apply technologies, innovation, and artificial intelligence specifically for trade, for business exchange. That's what we support with our organization, the initiatives, the Prosperity Initiative here in Puerto Rico.
I think, Nannette, you mentioned the user experience, and in the context of businesses, perhaps the customer experience. And how that is, transitioning in government, perhaps, and we all feel it that have worked in government. Sometimes that adoption is a little bit slower. But in the case of our economic engine, which are the small and medium enterprises of Puerto Rico, why should they care? Why should they care about thinking about data and technology from a data perspective? Privacy, for example, if you have a newsletter and you sell a product or a service and you want to attract additional customers to grow your business, you have to have data privacy for the personal identifiable information, for example, or for your purchases and the transactions that happen, retail transactions, let's just an example. But also from a customer experience, those that actually are in the marketplace. Government certainly can enable communities and can enable entrepreneurs in this process. Can you speak more about what is the intersection of government helping build those ecosystems, but also to Keiko's point, educate?
So we're doing a little bit of everything, all the things that you have mentioned. PRITS is a new office. basically, well, I have been there myself since 2021, and it was approved by virtue of Act 75 in 2019. But when we talk about having technology that's human-centered, right, we have to scratch off kind of the user part. We have to remember it's not users, it's human beings who are at the other end of the technology that's being built or procured, acquired, whatever it is. And we need to put their needs first, right? So at PRITS, for example, with our standard operating procedures, we will receive service tickets, we'll receive requests, right? Because I say my clients, right, are the people, the ones that we serve are the agencies, right? We support government agencies under the executive branch, but we can't really see it as us serving the executive branch. We have to serve the citizens. So whatever it is that the request, whatever the request we're receiving, right, we have to look beyond that and really look at what the service is that the agency requesting that service it needs to be looking at in order to provide to that citizen. So that's the first part, right? Now, in doing that, there's also several things that we do at PRITS. We have to establish policies, and we have to, so we create government policies related to technology, but we also have to push each agency to create their own policies as well. When we're talking about government, nobody has another choice. There's no competition. So if you're not satisfied with the service that you get from an agency, you can't just go to another one and shop around and see what you get. Right? So we need to really raise the bar and make sure that every service that we're providing to citizens is just as good as that service that's provided by Netflix. When you go to Netflix, you sign up and you accept the terms of services and the privacy policies, right? So we need to get there. And we're not there yet, and I recognize that. But slowly we are. Last Friday, I was at a presentation where I specifically spoke to this to several agency heads and why it's important to have these policies, right? In order to do that, it's not that simple, right? So you have to actually onboard your legal team onto the technology, get them to figure out what it is that we're doing and how we are using that data, right? And explain it and make sure the citizens agree to this. So it's quite complex. It's not something we can do and just push throughout government. It requires plenty of analysis and on every agency's part. But that's part of the job.
Thank you. I think there's a tie-in here of the analogy of government providing services to the customers and how businesses provide services to their clients. And in order to grow a business or expand into new markets or understand better who those customers are, where do you want to target those investments, you need to have data. You need to understand geographically where they're at. You need to understand what their wants and needs are if you want to tailor a product or a service. And again, I mean, I don't mean to use retail necessarily as an example. Actually, by way of that, do we have organizations in the room that represent specifically small and medium enterprises? Show of hands. Trade associations, organizations that represent the voice of las pymes. ¿Quién representa las pymes? ¿Quiénes son pymes? Who are businesses in the room? You're a corporation, small business, okay, etc. There is such thing as an entire infrastructure within big corporations and enterprises that specifically focus on this, right? You have a CIO or a Chief Information Officer. You might have, in large corporation, a Chief Data Officer. You might have a Chief Technology Officer, a Chief Innovation Officer. And by the way, innovation does not happen if there is not a human-centered approach to how you think about data and technology. Bryan, perhaps you can help us go back to basics a little bit here and think, as we go to the conversation, I want us to think a little bit about if you're going to a rural area in Puerto Rico and you're going, to a place where perhaps the infrastructure is not there. How would you explain to a small business you need to think about technology not only as a way for growth, but also as a way to better understand your clients, your users, perhaps markets you want to expand, and how data is so important in even informing those decisions. So we think about business operations, we think about corporations making business decisions every single day, and those decisions need to be data-driven. So there's a clear intersection here of data and technology and how perhaps AI can help in that. But can you speak a little bit more, if you're talking to small and medium-sized enterprises, why is that important for them?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked me this question because I have been fortunate enough to work in very large organizations, 800,000 person organizations, 4,000 person organizations, 40 people in an organization, a 10-person startup, and so I've seen the role that data can play across all different organizational sizes and structures. And I think the point that you bring up is very important, is in order to really learn and understand about your business and your customers, you must have and use data, right? And I think that that is something that can create a competitive advantage while you're delivering and serving your customers. And so when I think about data, really I think about all the people on my team that are doing work every day. And they're brilliant, they're experts, they're financial analysts and software developers and lawyers and human resources people, and they have so much expertise in their head, and then they go to work and they do a product and it gets shipped off, and all of that cognitive process disappears into thin air. And that is that is the data that we have to capture to make businesses to put them in a position to serve their customers better. What does someone do when they come into the office every day? Get that down on a piece of paper, get it down in a machine readable form, and create data about that process that exists and persists, and then you can figure out how to engineer and tweak and optimize over time, and from there you figure out how to, whatever your goals are. If it's to expand and scale and grow, then build a strategy on that. If it's to reduce costs, you build a strategy around that. If it's to create more value for your customers, you build a strategy around that. But that can be done in a way that is data-driven. And I think the important thing we're realizing now, even with advances in artificial intelligence today, there's still a need and a desire for the expertise that comes along with showing up to the office and being the expert of doing a particular thing, and turning that into a machine-readable form that you can apply technology to.
That gets me thinking. People are on a job, but in order for, in the context of Puerto Rico, to grow our business community and to grow the economy, there has to be a talent pipeline. There has to be, education, not only in the workforce and thinking about upskilling and reskilling. A lot of this comes by way of training, perhaps, but a lot of it is, learning by doing and doing project-based learning. And we have, especially in Puerto Rico, and you all know this, NASA comes here every year and they tap our engineers and our systems, folks, and our designers and our developers and our, data folks. And we have in Puerto Rico some of the most talented resources. In our institutions of higher education, in the University of Puerto Rico, and all of our private institutions, they're going to become the future workforce of the island. They're going to become the future CEOs. They're going to become the future chief operating officers. They're going to be the next, designer, developer. There is a huge case here of understanding where that talent pipeline starts, and it starts at school. It starts sometimes at home. There's great work happening here, with hackathons and boot camps, and really getting the third sector and kind of a full ecosystem going. In the previous panel, we talked about ecosystem building. There was a conversation about resilience and sustainability. And specifically in the concept of Puerto Rico, we have hurricane season every year, and we talk about resiliency sometimes in this vacuum, and sustainability, and there was a great definition provided earlier. But in order for that to happen, you need to have an educated talent pipeline. You need to have an educated workforce that are the ones that are actually going to grow those businesses in the future. Can you speak a little bit more, not the Web3 part or AI, but really the need for education and how the institutions of higher education, but starting really K through 12 at school, how is so important for us in Puerto Rico to really rethink the way that we're teaching our kids and preparing them to be that future workforce?
Good question. Overall of education, an overall haul has been required for quite some time, but I think now more than ever in the 21st century, we need to prepare students for the jobs of tomorrow. To that end, my association, we host boot camps, hackathons, webinars, seminars. We teach Girl Scouts, we go to government agencies, we host events, and the idea is to get people familiar with this. There's no how do you say, initiative to just figure out this stuff on your own. It's very challenging right now. It's so new and so fast. This is why we feel so strongly that education needs to be a focal point of what we do in Puerto Rico. And so if we can get them interested in STEM early on in middle school, and we can show them, oh, let's see, oh, you like games, you like video games, you like your Oculus, you like Facebook, oh, that's alternate reality, that's VR, that's metaverse. How about, you want to do city design planning? Let's scan the entire city of San Juan and help us design where we should put our 5G towers. An application. You have to show them how it's going to be used. You have to show everybody a use case that resonates with that. And I think with education, the importance is finding the use case that resonates and gets kids wanting to be involved. And then like on a more upper advanced level, like at UPR, we'll be teaching a couple courses at MyOS in Web3 this fall, with the hope that the students will be the leaders in building the foundations for the next wave of the internet, the way Silicon Valley did in California, but we can do that in Puerto Rico.
Actually, that's a great pivot on the world, transformation, or the global transformation, digital first. We live in a digital economy. We live in an economy where data is an asset. And this is something from the Census Bureau, it's really important. Data is an asset. Data is really what runs these companies, right? You gave a great example. In centralization, you have companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, others, that they hold the data and they make decisions based off of that. How do we think about the global transformation, and perhaps you mentioned Silicon Valley, and I think that's a great segue of transforming ecosystems, but also thinking about the full ecosystem. It's about research, universities, businesses working together, students. How do you bring all that together to really make change happen? Of course, Puerto Rico is an island, so sometimes the information and sometimes the insularity of Puerto Rico, sometimes the adoption of technology and different approaches or methodologies in order to work could be a little bit lagged. The case for Silicon Valley is industry, companies, businesses, startup were really the engine of making that transformation. It wasn't necessarily government. Jascha, can you speak a little bit more about how does that transformation happen, and now how do you see Puerto Rico serving as a platform for that transformation?
Sure. So, I will start with the people, right? We are here in this room. People come to me and ask me, Jascha, hey, you're talking about AI, Web3, and all this stuff. I don't get it. 10%, 5% maybe. And you're talking about the global businesses and all this stuff. How can I start? And this is the change is by the people, right? This is by the individuals, by us. And it has to happen first on me. I have to change. I have to at least a little bit think about, okay, what could be next? I need a team maybe. I don't want to do this mindset. I don't want to read everything. I don't want to understand everything. I need a small team, at least consultants, or maybe just working with the universities, very smart young talents, and to understand more about all this. And then there's a platform LinkedIn. This is a great platform, and I can invite you to connect me on LinkedIn. I have more than 10,000 followers and connections in LinkedIn. A global network that are people that are, most of them, so I know many of them, but not everyone for sure. But most of them are open to connect and to do business, and that's the best of innovation, right? So to the internet. People Center Internet, I'm Chief Strategy Officer of, was founded by Vince Cerf, the father of the internet. And Vince's vision was to connect, right? And the internet has connected us, and it's independent, at least more or less, and helping us. So just to start, how we can change, how we can improve, just start with a small team of innovation, internal, external, as I mentioned before. Connect me, connect us on LinkedIn, connect other people on LinkedIn, build your profile, and go from there. Any level. I can really recommend any level. I don't understand. I'm working with top leaders in this world with startup enthusiasts in rural areas in any kind of level. And I can recommend anyone to connect at least to the internet, use the business network LinkedIn, and then just ask the people for support, advice, and then go from there. Go iterative, don't do big plans, try, test, and execute. That's what we are here. We are working with as catalysts, as facilitators, with the people here for the people, but we are not bringing big concept telling you should do this or that. It won't work. That's what we want to do here with the locals here to improve the situation for Puerto Rico and bring this as a spotlight of the global economies as a reference point to the world, because we believe that here's the right mindset and the right potential to build something.
Thank you. I think thinking about Puerto Rico as perfect space, right, to iterate and test, and we talked about the resiliency needs, we talked about, continuity of business operations, which is something that all businesses care, especially in the case of a hurricane or an earthquake or even a pandemic. And what the pandemic showed us is that the digital transformation was exponentially accelerated because there was a need. The need is definitely still there, but it creates an opportunity space, and that from every one of these situations, the acceleration process for transforming into the digital ecosystem and the digital landscape also creates a need for collaboration, like Jascha, you mentioned, for reaching out and seeing how other countries, other ecosystems, other industries are doing in terms of making investments in their technology infrastructure. And when we say infrastructure, it kind of seems like a very, what does that really mean? But as we think in the case of hurricanes, for example, when the economy really just is paralyzed, there are use cases and examples of, other institutions, countries, or even organizations that have the same market area, the same industry, perhaps the same type of consumers that could really serve as a bridge for Puerto Rico to do knowledge transfer, to help Puerto Rico to really think about even trade and commerce in a very different way. And I think from the government perspective, perhaps Bryan and Nannette, you can address this, is what is the role of government in supporting, and I think just a great example, and this was all over the news, and Secretary Manuel Suider mentioned earlier, the investments of government in the 21st century technology workforce, for example, and the need to invest in the workforce. But there are many other ways that perhaps government can serve not only as a catalyst, but as a convener of the communities, convener of the small business communities, small and medium enterprises, la pyme, conveners of industries perhaps, and attracting that knowledge to Puerto Rico and doing that knowledge transfer. What are your perspectives, perhaps starting with Bryan, on the role of government in serving as that convener to bring that knowledge to Puerto Rico?
Wow, that's a big one. So thinking about this, and I have to put on my acquisition and procurement hat here, right? And so I've been a part of some very innovative, unique ways to do government acquisition. We've used different kinds of authorities, different kinds of flexibilities in order to create flexible procurement and acquisition processes, in order to create openings for small, innovative tech companies to get into the federal space. So I think that's one thing, is that partnership between government and industry. From a workforce perspective, you know, the 1.8 million federal employees are largely a non-technical workforce. And I think, you know, as a technology leader in government, what I'm looking at are all the tools that are available today to make technology more accessible. But I realize that's a systemic problem that extends even outside of federal government. It extends into middle America, it extends into, you know, places where there is a divide between the tech connected and the tech disconnected. And I hope that divide will continue to shrink over time as some of these tools become more accessible, right? And then I think what you do is you have that bridge then through your acquisition and your procurement processes and spending money on technology in concert with using technology and tools to level up your workforce. And there is a feedback loop then that happens between industry and government, and you know, the government is a very large customer that can provide some really useful feedback in helping small and medium-sized companies grow and get bigger and become more advanced.
And actually, Nannette, I think this is a great intersection to think about perhaps a question that people have in the back of their mind. How can you build a tech-enabled environment for businesses when perhaps broadband, energy, and others are key factors in enabling the business community in Puerto Rico? And if you can speak a little bit more about how government as a convener, but as an enabler, is really kind of setting the stage to ensure, you know, a digital connected community, but how the communities have to be part of that process when we think about if we want to have businesses grow, they need internet, they need broadband, they need access to energy. How does this all connect?
So we need many agencies and many components from government to make it work. And the government has been working hard on all of these things. So as you mentioned, Secretary Sidre with the DDEC, they're setting the stage in terms of funding existing programs that will provide, you know, specialized education for technology, and that goes towards, you know, individuals and our professionals, in every industry, right? So that sets the stage. Also, Invest Puerto Rico has been doing the job of getting that out there, right? Because that pushes forward economic development in the way that we become a more competitive and more attractive than to investors. There's also, right, the bridging the digital divide. We do that with the broadband program. It's the Smart Island program, right? So we have these initiatives in place precisely to bridge that digital divide and to provide connectivity everywhere. And then PRITS, you know, what we do is we have to make sure that the government doesn't stay behind, right? So we need to be at the same level as private sector, not only in Puerto Rico. You know, we need to really push ourselves as government to go forward and be at the same level and the same level of competitiveness as the best governments, right? So we need to get there, and that's what we're looking at. In terms of collaboration, a few weeks ago, we launched an initiative that I'm really excited about. We call it the Cyber Force. I later realized it's a weird name, but I really like it though. So what we do is we brought on the hacker community in Puerto Rico, and we've brought them on because we realize that the teams that we have in government, right, as much as we have these education, all these efforts to really train them, right, in specialized capabilities. But there's also really great resources out there. Like you said, we are a factory of really talented people in Puerto Rico, so we need to leverage that community as well. So what we've done is bring them in through nonprofit and we have actually our first meeting this week with all the citizens there, and we're hoping to do, you know, bug bounty programs, which we're really excited about, and kind of start really leveraging the talent that we have that's outside of government as well. We need to create that kind of ecosystem of collaboration for technology, no matter where it comes from.
And in terms of the collaboration and convenience, it's really great to hear, you know, we have, again, a lot of students, a lot of young communities that want to support and want to be part of that transformation for Puerto Rico. You mentioned, you know, hackers, civic hackers, and there's so much talent. And I think the talent that we have in Puerto Rico not only can support, you know, businesses and government, but also the community understand how opportunities, where the opportunities lie. And I think entrepreneurship is also something that is being kind of heavily, you know, developed in Puerto Rico, on how to really think about an entrepreneur mindset. And I want us to talk a little bit about a mindset, because it does require, when we think about innovation, technology transformation, business operations, it is really a mindset shift that we're seeing and that we have seen. So just to close up with the panel, the value systems, the mindsets that, you know, companies, corporations, enterprises need to really adopt to think innovatively, and it's really kind of a little bit of a startup mindset, right? It's bootstrapping, it's kind of working with what you got, it's looking at resources outside of your organization. Perhaps a lot of organizations don't have funding, or hey, I need to, you know, how do I finance my business? But there are other ways to collaborate. So real quick, we can just close that off in terms of collaboration and changing mindsets, so that we can really think about future-proofing those technology and data investments for the island. And with that, we'll close off.
Okay. Yes, collaboration, I think that's going to be incredibly important, providing the education in order for the ideas to continually to flourish and grow, both at a young level and more advanced with UPR. I think programs that are available, there are tons of meetups, there are tons of organizations that are doing things in tech. You just need to reach out and you'll see them.
I'm gonna say something that I've been hearing a lot, interacting with our dear friends in Silicon Valley and New York City, talking about venture capital money. And the one thing that they're afraid of is the David and Goliath, right? And so they're saying right now, technology is moving so fast that we have a David and Goliath situation on every deal that we make. And we need to decide if a tech startup is going to be a David or not. And I think, you know, when you look back at that story, the thing that made David triumph against Goliath is precision and innovation. And those are things that small technology companies and communities and meetups and you know, the education system and professional networks, they can all pull together, and they don't have to have the resources. They don't have to be a behemoth. They don't have to be Amazon. They don't have to be, you know, large tech company. But if they're precise, and if they're fast, and if they do something unique for their specific target group of customers, then they'll have success, and then they can continue to grow and scale in the technology industry.
Thank you.
So just very quickly, I actually come from the startup ecosystem, so I was very used to doing things very, very quickly, just iterating and moving very fast, and now I'm in government, and it's a culture change, and so this may be applicable to, you know, larger companies that have small governments, you know. So that culture change is always going to be, I think, the biggest thing where you see that reaction, where you're able to do that, you will very quickly see things change. So maybe just taking it department by department and seeing if you can kind of flip that culture, and within those small groups, that might have a very good effect.
Last year in Davos, the World Economic Forum annual meeting, I met Mark Benioff. He's the founder of Salesforce. Very many people know this company, and they have the concept of Shoshin. They every year they clean up, in fact, and just think from scratch. This I can really recommend, right? For the mindset, forget everything you learn, whatever. Just try to start from scratch at least one time a year. Think about your business model. Business model innovation is key. artificial intelligence will change your business model in any kind, will change your workforce. That's why I think it should be even, at least quarterly, it should be a little routine to reset and think about from scratch, at least with a small team. Thank you.
Well, I know we're pressed for time, so thank you again to our panelists for joining us today. I hope it was a great conversation. We'll stick around and hopefully connect with all of you. So thank you again to the Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce for inviting us.
Muchas gracias a todos, un fuerte aplauso. Definitivamente le agradecemos. Pasen por acá para la foto, aquí al frente. Le voy a pedir al panel de energía que vaya subiendo. Tienen que ir a recargar café, vinito, cervecita. Aprovechen networking en lo que hacemos este cambio. Venimos a hablar de paneles solares, microredes, tema del hidrógeno. Bueno, ellos son los expertos, así como este panel que tuvimos.